From the outside, my life with Olivia appeared flawless, a picturesque marriage built on love, success, and family. I was the calm, practical businessman who valued loyalty and trust, while Olivia thrived in high society circles, commanding attention with her charm and elegance. Our children, Lily and Ethan, were away on holiday with my parents, giving us a rare moment of solitude. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to reconnect as a couple, or so I thought. When Olivia suggested a vacation, I was surprised. "It'll be good for us," she said with that winning smile of hers. "Just the two of us. A chance to relax, unwind, and rekindle what we have." Her words were convincing, but I noticed the subtle impatience in her tone, as if she were waiting for me to agree without question. And I did. How could I not? Trusting Olivia had always been my default setting, and besides, she was right. We deserved a break. She took charge of planning the trip, insisting she knew exactly what we needed. "I'll handle everything," she said with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. I didn't argue. Olivia had a way of taking the reins and making it seem like she was doing me a favor. Truthfully, I was relieved to have one less thing to think about amidst the chaos of running a business. The weeks leading up to the vacation were a whirlwind of her excitement and my quiet anticipation. She spent hours researching resorts, booking spa packages, and shopping for vacation outfits. I simply nodded along, letting her enthusiasm carry us both. I reminded myself that this trip was her way of trying, of showing she cared about our relationship. But as the departure date approached, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling. It wasn't anything concrete, just a sense that something was off. Olivia's excitement seemed almost too rehearsed, her insistence on handling every detail unusually firm. Still, I dismissed my unease. Doubting Olivia felt disloyal, and I wasn't the type to second-guess my wife. When the day finally arrived, I watched her pack with an efficiency that spoke of experience. "Are you sure you've got everything?" I asked, half joking. "You've packed enough for a month." She laughed lightly, brushing off my comment. "You know how I am. Always prepared." As we headed to the airport, I allowed myself to relax. Maybe this was exactly what we needed, a chance to reconnect without the distractions of daily life. I looked at Olivia, radiant and confident, and reminded myself why I fell in love with her in the first place. The flight was smooth, and Olivia spent most of it scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing at me with a distracted smile. I didn't mind. I was content to sit quietly, imagining the serene beaches and peaceful days ahead. For once, I let myself believe that everything was as perfect as it seemed. When we arrived at the resort, Olivia's face lit up with excitement. "Isn't this stunning?" she gushed, gesturing to the grand entrance and the crystal-clear view of the ocean. I nodded, genuinely impressed. The place was luxurious, far beyond what I would have chosen for myself, but I didn't mind splurging if it made Olivia happy. As we checked in, she leaned into me, her voice low and conspiratorial. "This is going to be amazing, David. Just you wait." Her words felt reassuring, and I let my earlier doubts fade. For the first time in a long while, I felt optimistic. Whatever issues we had, this vacation felt like a step in the right direction. Little did I know, the perfect start was nothing more than an illusion, a carefully crafted facade that was about to shatter in the most unexpected way. The resort was breathtaking, the kind of place that graced luxury travel magazines. The expansive lobby gleamed with polished marble floors, towering glass windows offering a panoramic view of the turquoise ocean. A welcome drink in hand, I allowed myself a moment to absorb it all. Maybe Olivia was right. This vacation could be the fresh start we needed. That's when I saw them. "David, look who's here!" Olivia exclaimed, waving enthusiastically. 3 women, Clara, Fiona, and Melissa, strode toward us, their designer sunglasses perched atop perfectly styled hair. Their energy filled the room like a tidal wave, all high-pitched laughter and exaggerated greetings. I blinked, confused. This was supposed to be a couple's getaway. Olivia hadn't mentioned anyone else joining us. Clara reached us first, pulling Olivia into a tight hug. "Liv, you look amazing. I can't believe we're finally doing this." "This place is incredible," Melissa chimed in, her eyes sweeping the opulent surroundings. Leave it to Olivia to pick the best. I stood there, an outsider in what was clearly a prearranged gathering. Olivia turned to me, her smile wide and bright. David, you remember Clara, Fiona, and Melissa, don't you? I nodded politely, although I barely remembered them from past social events Olivia had dragged me to. Isn't this wonderful? Olivia said, slipping her arm through mine. We can all relax together. It'll be so much fun. Fun. Right. That was one word for it. The group gravitated toward the plush seating area in the lobby, where drinks and appetizers were already waiting. I trailed behind, still processing the fact that this wasn't a trip for two. As the women settled in, their laughter filled the air. Olivia was in her element, the center of attention, effortlessly steering the conversation. I tried to participate, but every attempt to contribute was met with polite indifference or redirected back to Olivia. Then came the subtle jabs. David, you're so lucky Olivia handles everything, Fiona said with a sly smile. I don't know how you'd manage without her. I mean, let's be honest, Clara added, swirling her drink. Olivia's the real powerhouse, isn't she? Running the household, keeping up with us, and still finding time for you. They laughed, and I forced a smile, masking the sting. Olivia didn't defend me. In fact, she leaned into the narrative, casually boasting about her connections and accomplishments as if I were an afterthought. Well, someone has to keep things running, Olivia said, raising her glass. David's got his business, but I'm the glue that holds everything together. The women cheered, raising their glasses in a mock toast. I sipped my drink in silence, wondering how I had ended up here. As the evening wore on, the conversation shifted to extravagant vacations, designer brands, and social events I had no interest in. Every now and then, Olivia would glance at me, her smile a mix of amusement and something else I couldn't quite place. Was it satisfaction? At one point, Melissa leaned forward, her voice low but not low enough. You're so lucky, Liv. Most guys wouldn't fund a trip like this. Fund? My grip tightened on my glass. Of course, I'd agreed to pay for the trip, but hearing it framed this way felt off. Olivia laughed lightly, brushing off the comment. Well, David understands the importance of treating me right. Don't you, darling? I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Of course. Inside, something shifted. This wasn't a couple's getaway. This was Olivia's stage, and I was just a prop. When the gathering finally broke up for the night, I felt more like an outsider than ever. Olivia seemed oblivious, chatting animatedly with Clara as we made our way to the front desk to check in. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, the receptionist greeted us. Your party's rooms are ready. Party. The word hit me like a slap. As the receptionist handed over the keys, I noticed something strange. All the rooms were registered under my credit card. Every single one. Excuse me, I said, my voice calm but firm. There seems to be a mistake. I only authorized one room. The receptionist glanced at Olivia, who stepped in smoothly. Oh, it's fine, David. I arranged everything. Trust me, it's easier this way. I turned to Olivia, waiting for an explanation. Instead, she handed me a single key. Here's your room, she said casually. I'll be staying with Clara tonight. We just have so much to catch up on. Before I could respond, Fiona chuckled. She needs her space, David. Don't take it personally. The others laughed, and I felt my face heat. Olivia handed the rest of the keys to her friends, who accepted them without question. We reserved rooms only for the elites, Melissa joked, grinning at me. It was then I realized how thoroughly I'd been played. This wasn't a vacation for us. This was Olivia's show, funded entirely by me. I looked at her, my expression unreadable. Enjoy your evening, I said evenly, pocketing the key. And then, without another word, I walked out of the lobby. I stepped outside into the cool evening air, the laughter of Olivia and her friends still echoing in my ears. The resort was stunning under the glow of the setting sun, but its beauty felt hollow now, tainted by the sting of betrayal. I stood there for a moment, breathing deeply, trying to suppress the storm brewing inside me. I wasn't the type to cause a scene. I never had been. But this was a level of disrespect I hadn't anticipated, even from Olivia. Walking back inside, I decided I needed clarity. Maybe there had been a misunderstanding, a miscommunication. I approached the front desk again, where the receptionist offered me a polite smile. "Mr. Bennett, is there something I can assist you with?" "Yes," I said, my tone steady. "I noticed all the rooms are under my credit card. Could you confirm the total booking details for me?" The receptionist hesitated for a fraction of a second before typing on her keyboard. "Of course, sir. There are 4 rooms reserved under your name, all charged to the card on file. Is there an issue?" "For rooms charged to me." I clenched my jaw, nodding slowly. "No issue. Thank you for confirming." I stepped away, my thoughts racing. Olivia hadn't just invited her friends on this trip. She had funded their entire stay on my dime. And the fact that she hadn't bothered to mention it, that spoke volumes. Making my way to my assigned room, I tried to calm down. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Olivia had intended to tell me but had been waiting for the right moment. Maybe. I opened the door to my room, a standard suite that was perfectly fine but noticeably less luxurious than what I'd glimpsed in the other rooms during check-in. Another detail that didn't escape me. Dropping my bag onto the bed, I sat down and rubbed my temples. I needed to talk to Olivia, to hear her explanation, even if I already had a sinking feeling I knew exactly how this conversation would go. Gathering my resolve, I left the room and headed to the suite where Olivia was staying with Clara. The door was ajar, and their voices spilled out into the hallway. "David's probably sulking right now," Olivia's voice floated out, light and dismissive. Clara laughed. "You don't have to explain yourself to him. He's lucky to even be here. Honestly, Liv, you're too nice sometimes." "Oh, please," Olivia replied. "David's harmless. He knows better than to make a fuss. Besides, this is my trip. He should just be grateful I let him tag along." The laughter that followed hit me like a physical blow. I stood frozen in the hallway, anger and humiliation warring within me. Grateful? Let me tag along? Was this really how she saw me? Taking a deep breath, I stepped back and returned to my room. Confronting her in the middle of her little audience would only give her and her friends more fuel to mock me. No, I needed to think this through. Later that evening, Olivia returned to the room briefly, her expression casual, as if nothing had happened. "David," she said, her tone breezy, "I'll be staying with Clara tonight. You don't mind, do you?" I stared at her, my voice calm but firm. "Mind? Not at all. Enjoy your evening." She gave me a brief smile, clearly mistaking my composure for acceptance, and left without another word. As the door clicked shut behind her, I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the space she had just vacated. How had we gotten here? How had the woman I once loved and trusted turned into someone who could treat me with such disdain? The answer didn't come, but my decision did. The next morning, I packed my bags and checked out of the resort without a word to Olivia or her friends. As I handed the receptionist my room key, she looked surprised. "Leaving so soon, Mr. Bennett?" "Yes," I replied evenly. "Please ensure all remaining charges to my card are canceled immediately." The receptionist nodded, sensing the finality in my tone. "Of course, sir." Walking out of the resort, I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. Olivia had made it clear where I stood in her life, and I wasn't going to stay where I wasn't valued. I slipped my phone out of my pocket, opened my banking app, and began canceling every card connected to Olivia's spending. Then I made one more call, to my lawyer. "Mr. Bennett, how can I help you?" "I'd like to begin drafting divorce papers," I said, my voice steady. "Today." The drive home was quiet, the kind of silence that forces you to confront every thought, every doubt, every simmering emotion. I'd replayed the events of the past 24 hours over and over in my mind, each detail sharpening my resolve. Olivia's betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about the lack of respect, the mockery, the complete disregard for the partnership I thought we shared. When I pulled into the driveway, the house greeted me like an old friend, a stark contrast to the false luxury of the resort. It felt good to be home, a place that had always offered me comfort and stability. But even this space now carried traces of Olivia's manipulation. I went straight to my office, shutting the door behind me. The room was my sanctuary, lined with bookshelves, and a large oak desk where I had made countless decisions that shaped my business. But this decision felt different. It wasn't about contracts or clients. It was about reclaiming my life. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint accounts. The numbers stared back at me, a grim reminder of how deeply Olivia had benefited from my trust. With a few keystrokes, I froze every account she had access to, ensuring she wouldn't be able to spend another dime without my knowledge. Next, I called the credit card company. The representative on the other end was polite, almost too cheerful for the gravity of what I was doing. "Yes, I'd like to cancel all cards associated with my account," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Immediately." "Of course, Mr. Bennett. Is there a specific reason for the cancellation?" "Fraudulent activity," I replied without hesitation. The word tasted bitter in my mouth, but it was the truth. Olivia had abused my trust, and I wasn't going to let it continue. Once the financials were secured, I turned my attention to the divorce papers. My lawyer, Rebecca, was efficient as always. "I'll have the first draft ready by tomorrow," she assured me. "Do you want to include any stipulations regarding the house or other assets?" "Yes," I said firmly. "The house stays with me, and I want to ensure custody arrangements are fair for the kids. They don't deserve to be caught in the middle of this." Rebecca agreed, her tone professional yet empathetic. "Understood. I'll make sure everything is in order." By the time I hung up, the weight on my chest had lessened slightly. I was taking control, piece by piece, and it felt empowering. Meanwhile, I imagined Olivia back at the resort, basking in the glow of her so-called freedom. She probably hadn't even noticed I was gone yet. Or maybe she had, and she was too proud to care. Either way, she would soon realize the consequences of her actions. As the day turned into evening, I allowed myself a rare indulgence, a quiet dinner alone, free from the tension and performative conversations that had become the norm with Olivia. I poured myself a glass of wine, savoring the peace that had been absent for far too long. The next morning, I checked my phone. As expected, there were no messages from Olivia. It was almost laughable. Here I was, her husband, the man who had funded her lavish lifestyle, and she couldn't even bother to check in. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Not a call, but a notification from one of the credit cards I'd canceled. Olivia was trying to use it. A smile tugged at the corners of my mouth as I imagined the scene. Olivia confidently handing over the card, only to have it declined. Her friends watching, judgmental and curious. The facade she had built starting to crack. I didn't feel guilty, not even a little. She had made her choices, and now she would face the consequences. Over the next few hours, the notifications kept coming. Spa treatments, room service, designer boutiques, all declined. Olivia's spending spree was unraveling in real time, and I didn't lift a finger to stop it. By evening, the calls started. First, a single ring, then silence. Then another, more persistent. I ignored them all, letting her desperation build. Finally, I turned my phone off entirely, sinking into the couch with a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. Olivia thought she could control me, manipulate me, but she was wrong. This wasn't the calm before the storm. The storm had already begun, and Olivia was about to realize just how much damage it would cause. The call started early the next morning. My phone buzzed relentlessly, the screen lighting up with Olivia's name over and over again. I let it ring, savoring the irony. For years, I had been the one reaching out, trying to bridge the gaps between us, only to be dismissed or ignored. Now, the tables had turned, and Olivia was desperate to get my attention. By mid-morning, I received a notification that made me pause, a message from the resort. Olivia's failed transactions were piling up, and the hotel was demanding payment. I smirked, imagining the chaos unfolding on her end. At the resort, things were unraveling quickly. Olivia and her friends had continued their indulgent lifestyle, oblivious to the financial storm brewing. They ordered extravagant meals, booked spa packages, and even planned a private boat ride, all under the assumption that my money would cover it. But reality struck hard when the first card was declined. "What do you mean, declined?" Olivia asked, her voice loud enough to turn heads in the elegant dining hall. The waiter shifted uncomfortably, holding out the receipt. I'm sorry, ma'am. The payment didn't go through. Perhaps there's another card you'd like to use? Fiona leaned over, her expression incredulous. Are you serious? This is Olivia Bennett we're talking about. Just run the card again. I've already tried, ma'am, the waiter replied, his tone apologetic but firm. Olivia's confidence faltered as she handed over a second card, another one linked to me. The waiter returned moments later, shaking his head. Declined, he said simply. The laughter and chatter at their table died, replaced by an uneasy silence. Clara was the first to break it. Olivia, what's going on? Olivia forced a smile, waving off their concern. It's just a mistake. David must have moved some things around. I'll sort it out. But as the hours passed and more transactions failed, the cracks in Olivia's facade grew wider. Resort staff approached her with increasing urgency, their polite professionalism giving way to firm demands for payment. Back home, I monitored the situation from a distance, my phone lighting up with alerts each time Olivia tried to use a card. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck, and I couldn't look away. By the end of the day, Olivia's desperation reached its peak. She called me again, her voice strained when I finally answered. David, she began, her tone laced with forced calm. There seems to be an issue with the credit cards. The resort staff is saying they're declined. Can you check on that for me? I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch before answering. I already know, Olivia. Her breath hitched. What do you mean? I mean I canceled them. All of them. The line went silent for a moment. Then her voice returned, sharp and accusing. You canceled them? Why would you do that? Why? I repeated, my voice calm but icy. Because I'm done, Olivia. Done funding your games, your lies, and your ego. You've taken enough from me, and it stops now. You're overreacting, she said, her voice rising. This is just a misunderstanding. You didn't need to humiliate me like this. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Humiliate you? That's rich coming from the woman who brought her friends on a trip I paid for and mocked me in front of them. No, Olivia, this isn't humiliation. This is justice. Before she could respond, I ended the call, cutting off whatever excuse or manipulation she had prepared. Back at the resort, Olivia's world continued to crumble. Clara and Fiona, once so eager to bask in her glow, began to distance themselves. Olivia, what's really going on? Clara demanded. You said you had everything under control. Now we're stuck with unpaid bills and no way to cover them. Fiona crossed her arms, her expression sour. Were you lying about being the breadwinner? Is David the one paying for everything? Olivia's temper flared, but she couldn't deny the truth. It's not like that, she insisted. David's just being difficult. But her friends weren't convinced. The bond they had shared, if it could even be called that, was disintegrating under the weight of Olivia's deception. As the resort staff continued to press for payment, Olivia realized she had no choice but to face the consequences. She tried calling me again, but I ignored every attempt. Later that evening, she received another blow. A resort employee approached her in the lobby, handing her an envelope. What's this? She asked, opening it with trembling hands. The words, divorce petition, stared back at her in bold letters. Her friends, who had gathered nearby, looked over her shoulder in stunned silence. The humiliation was complete. Olivia, Clara said after a long pause, her voice filled with a mix of pity and frustration. You've really done it this time. And for the first time in years, Olivia was left truly alone. It had been 2 days since I'd left the resort, and I'd stayed true to my decision to cut Olivia off entirely. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, its screen lighting up sporadically with Olivia's name, but I ignored each call. By now, the divorce papers I had arranged would have been delivered, and I could only imagine her reaction when she opened them. It didn't take long for the fallout to reach me. Later that evening, as I sat in my office reviewing documents, my phone buzzed relentlessly. At first, I thought it was Olivia, but when I glanced at the screen, I saw an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. David Bennett, I said curtly. Mr. Bennett, this is Karen from the Riviera Resort. The voice on the other end said politely. We're reaching out regarding an urgent matter involving your wife and her party. It appears there are unpaid charges for their stay, and they've informed us you are the account holder. I suppressed a laugh, leaning back in my chair. Karen, I'm not sure what Olivia told you, but we're no longer in a position where I'm responsible for her expenses. In fact, I've taken steps to ensure I'm not. Karen hesitated, clearly unsure how to proceed. I understand, sir, but the charges are significant. We were hoping to resolve this amicably. I have no doubt, I replied, my tone cool. But Olivia and her friends are adults. They can figure it out. Good luck. I hung up, shaking my head. Olivia had always relied on me to clean up her messes, but those days were over. Back at the resort, Olivia's world was falling apart. After the divorce papers were delivered, the resort staff refused to wait any longer for payment. They demanded immediate action, threatening to involve local authorities if the balance wasn't settled. David can't do this, Olivia fumed, pacing the lobby. She clutched the divorce papers in one hand, her phone in the other. He's being petty. He'll cave. He always does. But the resort manager wasn't interested in her personal drama. Ma'am, this is a business matter. We require payment in full before your party can continue to use our facilities. Clara, who had been silently observing the spectacle, finally snapped. Olivia, what is going on? First, the cards are declined, and now we're being told the bills haven't been paid? You said you had this covered. Fiona, never one to hold back, chimed in. You lied to us, didn't you? All that talk about being the breadwinner. It's all David's money, isn't it? Olivia glared at them, her composure cracking. That's not the point. David's being vindictive. He canceled everything without warning. Maybe because he's finally tired of your games, Clara retorted. The tension between them was palpable. Olivia, once the confident ringleader of their group, was now exposed and vulnerable. Her friends, who had basked in her generosity, were turning against her. When the resort staff demanded their passports as collateral, the humiliation reached its peak. Olivia was forced to call her brother, begging for a loan to settle the bills. He agreed reluctantly, but not without a lecture that left her seething. By the time the payments were cleared, the damage was done. Clara and Fiona packed their bags, refusing to spend another moment at the resort. This isn't what I signed up for, Clara said coldly. You can find your own way home, Olivia. Fiona gave her a scornful look. Good luck with your divorce. You're going to need it. And just like that, Olivia was alone. The next morning, she returned to our home, expecting to find some semblance of normalcy. Instead, she was met with locked doors and a note taped to the front. Olivia, your belongings have been packed and sent to your brother's house. Please contact Rebecca Smith for any further communication. She'll handle the rest. David. The note was short, impersonal, and final. Olivia stood on the porch, staring at the life she'd taken for granted. Inside, I sat with a cup of coffee, watching her through the window. It wasn't out of cruelty, it was out of clarity. This was the life she had chosen, and I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her anymore. After several minutes, she finally left. Her shoulders slumped. I watched her drive away, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. This wasn't how I had envisioned our marriage ending, but it was the only path forward. For the first time in years, I felt free. The house was quiet when Olivia finally left, the kind of stillness that felt like a clean slate. I sat by the window, sipping my coffee, watching her car disappear down the street. A part of me felt heavy, weighed down by the wreckage of what once was. But another part, one I hadn't felt in years, felt free, untangled from her manipulation, her ego, her constant need to control every aspect of our lives. After she left, the real work began. I didn't want my children, Lily and Ethan, to hear about the divorce in bits and pieces or from whispers in Olivia's social circle. I had to tell them, but carefully. They deserved honesty without the burden of our adult conflicts. Later that evening, I sat them down in the living room. They were back from their trip with my parents, their laughter still echoing in my ears as they recounted their adventures. I hated to break their joy, but I knew it couldn't wait. Lily, Ethan, I began, my voice steady but soft. There's something important I need to talk to you about. Their smiles faded as they exchanged glances. "Is everything okay, Dad?" Ethan asked. "It will be," I assured them. "But things are going to change. Your mom and I have decided to separate." Lily's eyes widened. "Separate? What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "It means we won't be living together anymore. Your mom and I have had some problems for a long time, and this is the best decision for all of us." "But why?" Lily's voice cracked, her young mind struggling to grasp the complexity of adult relationships. I leaned forward, meeting their eyes. Sometimes, even when two people care about each other, they realize they're not happy together. It's no one's fault, and it doesn't change how much we love you. Ethan frowned, his brow furrowed in thought. "So, Mom's leaving?" "Yes," I said gently. "She's staying with your uncle for now. You'll still see her, and she'll always be your mom. That will never change." Lily sniffled, and I reached out to hold her hand. "I know it's hard to understand right now, but I promise we'll get through this together. You two are the most important people in my life, and I'll always be here for you." They nodded slowly, their faces a mix of sadness and confusion. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. I wanted them to feel secure, even as our family dynamic shifted. The next few days were a whirlwind of adjustments. I focused on creating a stable routine for the kids, ensuring they felt safe and loved. I took them to school, helped with homework, and planned movie nights to distract them from the tension. Meanwhile, Olivia's fallout continued. Word of her financial troubles and our impending divorce spread quickly through her social circle. The friends who had once flocked to her for parties and favors now distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone whose status had crumbled. Her brother called me once, exasperated. "David, she's a mess. She's blaming everyone but herself. I don't know how to deal with her." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "She'll have to figure it out. I've done all I can." "Do you think she'll change?" he asked. I hesitated. "I don't know. That's up to her." At the same time, I began to feel lighter. Without Olivia's constant demands and criticism, I had the space to focus on myself. I dove into work, channeling my energy into new projects. I even started reconnecting with old friends, people I hadn't seen in years because Olivia had always found a reason to keep me tethered to her world. One evening, as I helped Ethan with his science project, he looked up at me and said, "Dad, you seem happier." The simplicity of his observation caught me off guard. I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Thanks, buddy. I think I am." The divorce proceedings moved swiftly, thanks to my meticulous preparation. Rebecca, my lawyer, handled everything efficiently, ensuring the settlement was fair but firm. Olivia fought initially, but she quickly realized she had little leverage. By the time the divorce was finalized, I felt a sense of closure. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it was a life I could rebuild. A life rooted in honesty, respect, and the unwavering love I had for my children. As for Olivia, her isolation grew. Without the financial security and social clout she had once enjoyed, she was forced to confront the reality of her choices. Whether or not she would learn from them remained to be seen. But that was no longer my concern. I had my children, my peace, and a future that felt bright for the first time in years. The fallout was over, and in its place was the promise of a new beginning. When I decided to cut Olivia off completely, I knew it would force her to face the consequences of her choices. What I didn't expect was how quickly her world would unravel. The woman who once thrived in the glow of high society and surrounded herself with sycophants was now facing the harsh reality of life without me as her safety net. It began with whispers among her friends. Clara and Fiona, who had abandoned her at the resort, wasted no time sharing their side of the story with their social circle. The tales of Olivia's unpaid bills and her humiliation at receiving divorce papers in the middle of a luxury vacation quickly made their rounds. Her carefully curated image of a powerful, independent woman shattered overnight. Olivia had always prided herself on being the center of attention, the life of every party, but now she was the topic of ridicule. Invitations to events dried up, and those who had once flattered her avoided her calls. The socialite who once commanded rooms with her presence was now a pariah. Her brother, Jacob, reluctantly took her in after she left the resort. He called me often during those first few weeks, venting his frustration. "David, she's impossible," he said one evening, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "She refuses to accept responsibility for anything. She blames you for everything. The divorce, the money, even her friends turning on her." I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "She needs to wake up, Jacob. This is the bed she made. All I can do is focus on moving forward for the kids and myself." Jacob groaned. "I know. I just wish she'd realize how good she had it. You gave her everything, David. And this is how she repays you?" "She'll figure it out," I replied. "Or she won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore." Despite his frustrations, Jacob tried to help her. He encouraged her to look for a job, but Olivia scoffed at the idea. The woman who had once mocked me for working long hours now found herself unwilling and unprepared to do the same. "I can't work a regular job, Jacob," she snapped during one of their arguments, which he later recounted to me. "Do you know how humiliating that would be?" "People would talk." "People are already talking, Olivia," he shot back. Meanwhile, I was thriving. Without Olivia's constant demands and drama, I found myself rediscovering who I was. My business flourished as I poured my energy into new projects. More importantly, my relationship with Lily and Ethan grew stronger. We spent weekends hiking, cooking, and even tackling DIY projects around the house. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Lily looked at me thoughtfully. "Dad, do you miss Mom?" The question caught me off guard, but I answered honestly. "I miss the good times, Lily, but I don't miss the way things were at the end. Sometimes, letting go is the best thing you can do for yourself and for the people you care about." She nodded, her young mind processing my words. "I think I understand. You seem happier now." "I am," I said, smiling at both her and Ethan. "And that's because I have you too. You're the most important part of my life." Olivia, on the other hand, struggled to adapt. Her attempts to maintain her old lifestyle fell flat, and her isolation deepened. She reached out to a few acquaintances, hoping to rekindle friendships, but they offered only polite excuses and vague promises to catch up soon. One day, she called me. I debated whether to answer, but decided it was better to hear her out than ignore her completely. "David," she began, her tone softer than I'd heard in years. I just wanted to talk." "What do you need, Olivia?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. There was a pause before she replied. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't realize how much I depended on you until it was gone. I know I messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to tell you." Her words surprised me, but I didn't let my guard down. "I appreciate the apology," I said carefully, "but an apology doesn't erase what happened. I've moved on, Olivia, and I think you should too." She sniffled, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy, but I reminded myself of all the times I tried to fix things, only to be met with contempt and indifference. "Take care of yourself, Olivia," I said before ending the call. After that, I heard from her less frequently. Jacob mentioned that she had finally started looking for work, though her progress was slow. She was learning the hard way that the world doesn't cater to those who take it for granted. As for me, I focused on the future. I wasn't bitter or angry anymore. I was simply free. Olivia's isolation was a consequence of her choices, and while I wished her no ill will, I had no intention of letting her drag me back into her chaos. Life without Olivia was quieter, simpler, and filled with opportunities one hadn't realized I was missing. For the first time in years, I was truly at peace. Months had passed since Olivia walked out of my life, leaving behind the wreckage of our marriage. In that time, I'd built something stronger, something more fulfilling, not just for myself, but for Lily and Ethan too. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Olivia's apology lingered in my mind. Her voice, so uncharacteristically soft, had struck a chord in me. For years, she had been the center of our relationship, consuming all the attention while I quietly supported her. Hearing her admit fault was unexpected, but it wasn't enough to undo what had been done. One afternoon, as I worked in my home office, my phone buzzed. It was Olivia. I hesitated, then answered. "David," she began, her voice hesitant. "I wanted to ask if we could meet." just to talk. In person. About what? I asked, careful not to let my guard down. Everything, she said. I need to apologize properly. Please. After a long pause, I agreed. All right. Tomorrow, at the cafe near the park. Noon. The next day, I arrived early, my emotions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Olivia walked in a few minutes later, looking different. She wasn't wearing her usual designer clothes or perfectly styled hair. She looked tired, humbled, like someone who had been through a storm and was still finding her footing. Thank you for coming, she said, sitting across from me. I nodded, waiting for her to speak. I've had a lot of time to think, she began, her hands clasped tightly on the table. About us, about what I did to you, to our family. And I realize now how selfish I was. I took you for granted, David. You gave me everything, and I repaid you by treating you like you didn't matter. Her words were raw, unpolished, and they caught me off guard. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, she continued, her voice breaking, but I needed to tell you how sorry I am. For the lies, the manipulation, the way I made you feel like you were less than you are. You didn't deserve that. I looked at her, searching for any sign of insincerity, but all I saw was a woman who had been broken by her own choices, now trying to piece herself back together. I appreciate the apology, I said finally, but Olivia, forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. Too much has happened, and I can't trust you again. Not the way I used to. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I don't expect us to go back. I needed to make things right, even if it's only in words. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything unsaid lingering between us. How are the kids? She asked softly. They're doing well, I replied. They miss you, but they're adjusting. I've tried to keep things stable for them. She smiled weakly. You're a good father, David. Better than I ever gave you credit for. Her words hit harder than I expected. For years, I had been the steady force in our family, the one who made sacrifices without recognition. Hearing her acknowledge that was both validating and bittersweet. I'll always be there for them, I said, and I hope you'll do the same. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I will. I'm trying to rebuild my life, to be someone they can be proud of again. We parted ways that day on a somewhat lighter note. While there was no reconciliation, there was closure, a sense that the wounds we had inflicted on each other were finally beginning to heal. In the weeks that followed, I saw glimpses of Olivia's effort to change. She reached out to the kids more often, attending their school events and making genuine attempts to reconnect. I allowed her that space, knowing it was important for Lily and Ethan to have both parents in their lives. As for me, I continued to move forward. I had started seeing someone, a kind, genuine woman named Emily, who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. Our relationship was still new, but it felt different. It felt real. One evening, as I sat on the porch with Emily, watching the sunset, I reflected on how far I had come. The betrayal that had once consumed me now felt like a distant memory. Olivia's apology had been a reminder that even the deepest wounds could begin to heal, but it had also reinforced my resolve to never settle for less than I deserved. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The early morning sunlight filtered through the living room window, casting a warm glow across the space. It was a new day, another step forward in a life that felt like it was finally mine. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee while Lily and Ethan chattered about their plans for the weekend. Their laughter filled the house, a reminder of what truly mattered. It hadn't been easy getting here. The road from betrayal to this moment had been fraught with anger, heartbreak, and doubt. But now, looking at my children and the life we were rebuilding, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Dad, can we go to the park later? Ethan asked, his eyes bright with excitement. Of course, I replied, smiling. How about we pack a picnic and make a day of it? Lily grinned. Can Emily come too? Her question caught me off guard, but only for a moment. Emily had been a constant in our lives lately, her warmth and kindness slowly weaving into the fabric of our family. She had met Lily and Ethan a few weeks ago, and to my relief, they adored her. "I'll ask her," I said, keeping my tone casual. "But let's plan it either way." Emily had been a surprise in every sense of the word. After years of feeling invisible in my marriage, she saw me for who I was, a father, a man, someone worth valuing. Her presence wasn't overwhelming or demanding. It was steady, supportive, and full of quiet joy. Later that afternoon, we met at the park. Emily arrived with a basket of snacks, her easy smile lighting up the day. Lily and Ethan ran ahead to the playground while we set up a blanket under a shady tree. "You're spoiling them," I teased as she unpacked cookies and sandwiches. "They deserve it," she said with a shrug. "And so do you." Her words made me pause. For so long, I had been conditioned to believe that my worth was tied to what I could provide. Emily reminded me that I was enough just as I was. As the day went on, I watched my kids play, their laughter mingling with the sounds of the park. Emily sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on mine, and I realized something profound. I was happy. Truly, deeply happy. Meanwhile, Olivia was navigating her own journey. She had finally found a job at a local boutique, a far cry from the high society events she once dominated. It was humbling work, but it seemed to be teaching her the value of effort and responsibility. She had also begun mending her relationship with Lily and Ethan. She called regularly, asked about their lives, and even attended a few school events. The bitterness that once defined our interactions was fading, replaced by a tentative truce. One evening, after a school play, Olivia approached me in the parking lot. "David," she began, her voice hesitant, "thank you for letting me be part of their lives. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful." I nodded, my expression neutral but not unkind. "It's not about what you deserve, Olivia. It's about what they deserve. And they deserve to have both parents in their corner." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she said nothing more. We parted ways, the unspoken understanding between us a sign of how far we had come. As the months passed, my life continued to take shape in ways I hadn't imagined. Emily and I grew closer, our relationship built on trust and mutual respect. She encouraged me to pursue hobbies I had long neglected. Photography, hiking, even cooking. One evening, as we prepared dinner together, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "David," she said softly, "have you ever thought about what's next? Not just for us, but for you." I paused, considering her question. "I think I'm already living it," I replied. "For the first time in years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She smiled, her eyes warm. "I'm glad. You deserve this." The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Life wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was real, and it was mine. Olivia's chapter in my life had closed, but it had taught me lessons I would carry forever. The importance of self-respect, the power of forgiveness, and the value of authenticity. As I stood on the porch one evening, watching Lily and Ethan play in the yard, Emily by my side, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The road to this moment had been long and painful, but it had led me to a place of peace, love, and hope. This was my new beginning.